And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Ryan, who during one of his NDEs found a way out of the darkness, and today we're going to learn about it. Ryan, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Ryan, if you don't mind, let's just start with your first NDE and go from there.
Well, my first NDE was back in 2009. I remember it because I got the date tattooed on my finger, 10/1/09. It was an overdose, a pretty severe one. And my girlfriend at the time had woken up and had found me not breathing. So they called an ambulance. The ambulance came and got me, and I was non-responsive. My heart, I wasn't breathing, and I don't remember any part of that. And I have to say one thing about addiction: when you're overdosing on certain things, it almost feels like an astral experience, like an out-of-body experience. And it can be very confusing because, you don't know, like what's really happening, but something's happening. So they make it to the hospital and they incubated me. And this is where I went out of my body. I remember being in a dark place, but it was very peaceful. And it kind of reminded me of the way that the drug would make me feel, that peace that takes everything away, all the pain, all the fear, everything. So I felt that at first, and I was like, well, this feels kind of similar, but and then I'm wondering, I'm like, well, what's going on? So I'm seeing myself like incubated and all that, and I'm hearing the conversation with the doctors, and my family's arriving. And I'm not really putting two and two together. Like, how am I able to see all this, yet I'm still lying down in this bed? Like, I'm not really understanding that aspect of it. But like, I really liked where I was. And I didn't, I really did not want to go back into my body. Man, I'm just going to let this play out. And then my family started to get there, and I started to see their reactions. And that was when the guilt started setting in. I'm like, oh man, what did I do? My family's out here. They're all watching this, and my dad's breaking down crying at the foot of my bed. So it was like, I was like, oh man, and that's kind of when I started thinking like, what have I done? And then I heard the nurses saying that like, everything we're giving him, he's so full of drugs that like everything we're giving him isn't touching it. And they're like, we cannot bring him out of it. And I remember feeling a sense of like pride for that in a weird way. Like, man, I'm like, I did such a good job at, being an addict that, and yeah, for some reason I felt some kind of sick pride in that. And which even made me feel even more guilty. So, I'm watching all this going on, and I just decide I got to come back. I have to come back. I didn't see anybody. There was nobody there with me. It was just kind of like my own personal thing. But I felt like I wasn't alone though. I didn't feel alone. It felt really great. But it's like, I just couldn't do my family like that. We have already had, my brother had committed suicide. We just had a lot of tragedy in our family, and I felt like I was adding to that. And I was already like the black sheep, but my family, we still had a good relationship. We had a lot of love for each other. Because I tried to play the functioning addict, like everything's okay, while, they're watching me and they're like, no, you're not. So I decided to come back, and like I was there in my body, and I remember feeling the foreign the foreign feeling of tubes being in my body. And I'm like, oh, this sucks. So, I was there, but yeah, it just seemed like, just seeing my dad at the foot of my bed, and I just couldn't go out like that. I had to be stronger. So I decided to go back into my body and fight. And I did have a choice. I felt like I had a choice for that.
In the morning, you OD'd. Did you lose consciousness during your OD? And then when you got to the hospital, your consciousness regained when you popped out of your body?
Yeah. Because I was like in that, when you're in an addiction, which was heroin for me, but I was also like taking pills. I mean, I was way out there with it. Like I go very, very, very hard. I've always been that way. So it was hard to tell the difference between that like ignorant bliss that those drugs put me in and really passing away. But yeah, at that, there was a moment that I think I was getting very, very close to either, to really truly dying. And then that's where I started, to see what was going on in the room with me. But I was so caught up in that, like, I didn't like think about exploring anything else. Like, oh, this is the afterlife, or let's go see what's going on. I didn't have that. I was riddled with guilt.
Do you recall losing consciousness, like the moment that you were dying in your house before you went to the hospital?
No. Nope.
So you did think that you could have stayed if you wanted to, right?
Yes. Yeah. The feeling in the beginning before I kind of realized what was happening was like, wow, this is like beyond peaceful. It almost felt like a waiting room. You know how they say purgatory, or kind of you're in limbo? That's almost what it felt like. It just felt like I was just kind of in a waiting place, but it just felt okay to be there. It felt peaceful, beyond the peace that the drugs would give me, but it was a little hard to tell that.
All right. Well, let's move on to your second NDE.
The second NDE, I have to say that I've always had an infatuation with the spiritual, with death, and I'm not really a negative person. I've always kind of been a happy, positive person. But I just went down this road that led me to this experience. And I was doing drugs and I was hanging out with people. And like, I don't even know what I was taking. But I know some of it was like GHB, some of it was like methamphetamine. And I was up for probably like 3 days. Like I could not sleep. And like if you don't go without sleep for a couple of days, it really starts to mess with your head. So I was like freaking out. I'm like calling my pastor and I'm like, what is happening? I felt like I got stuck on this wavelength that was so oppressive and just so dark that it was like consuming me. And I was started hearing voices, and I've never heard voices before. Sometimes through the withdrawals, you'll start hearing voices. And I mean, after this, I probably was in like 4 different psychiatric hospitals. So we'll get to so I'm kind of freaking out, and this is going on for like 2 more days. I'm hearing these voices and they're telling me to hurt myself. They're telling me to do other things to people. And I just could not shut it off. So, I tried everything I could and it just wouldn't go away. So after about the 4th day, I had went to work and it just, the voices just would not go away. And just something flipped inside of me and said, you know what, I'm going to take control of the situation and I'm going to finish myself. I said, this is it. I said, I'm going to do it. I said, brother, here I come. So I just took off from my house and jumped on a bike, and, I feel like people are after me. It was just a terrible feeling. And the only kind of control I felt like I would gain was to go back to that peaceful spot that I remembered. And, I fought against it so hard because I really didn't want to do it. But, I had made up my mind. So I had rode my bike to a motel room, went across to the place to get a suicide kit, and, got in the bathroom, and that's what I did. To save all the details about how that happened. But, I thought I had succeeded because I passed out from loss of blood. And I remember feeling cold, very cold. The coldness came over me. And then I heard my motel door open, and I feel a gust of wind hit me. And it felt like somebody was in there with me. And I'm like, and those evil voices are still they're telling me that, yeah, you're part of some snuff video, and we're putting this in your head to make you do this, and you did it. So that happens, and then I wake up, right? So I open my eyes, and I'm like, so this is the afterlife. I'm like, I did it. But I still something didn't seem quite right. And my phone was just been ringing off the hook ever since I disappeared. Everybody's freaking out. Everybody's trying to call me. And so I was like, well, if I'm dead, I could answer the phone, let's just play this out, see what happens. So I answer the phone, and it's this girl that I know, and she asked me where I was, and I was like, I told her where I was at, and she came, and I'm just at this point I'm defeated because I have no idea what the heck's going on. I really thought that I had done this, So and then it's just from that point on, shit just got so weird. It's like she came and she cleaned up all the blood and then took me to the hospital. And then at the hospital, I'm like, man, something did not feel right. And this was back in 2012. And I got to the hospital, and it's like, how some people, you could tell that they have no empathy or they have no just sympathy for anybody. That's kind of the way that I was being treated. And I'm like, man, this is odd. And I remember being in this hospital room, and I'm thinking in my mind, I'm just going to shut my mind down, and I'm going to disconnect from whatever this world is. And I did just that. I wouldn't respond. I just kind of closed myself off, went inside my own mind. And because I was just searching for any kind of safe hold of reality to figure what the hell is going on. And I remember people started walking past my room, and I'm hearing a patient's thoughts from down the hall. I'm like, what is going on? I'm hearing these thoughts, and I'm I officially gone crazy. I'm like, this is it. I'm Looney Tunes. I lost it. Give me a straitjacket. Let's go. It's just, it was so odd. People were, and there was these people nurses, and they're they're acting like they're on their phone, and they're filming me. And I'm like, no, I'm just crazy. I'm like, this is just, and then the doctor comes in, and he starts stitching me up and using the hugest needle that I've ever seen. And I didn't get any pain medication or anything. He starts stitching me up, and I still have the holes from the size of the needle that he used with this thick, very, very thick stitching. And I've had stitches before. I know what stitches look like. I know how they're properly done. I know people in the medical field. I mean, they did a Rocky Horror Picture Show job on my cuts because I had made, straight down the wrists. I had like 7 or 8, straight up open wounds that needed to be stitched up. So I'm like, man, maybe I'm in hell. And I was like, maybe this is just hell. And I just remember like it, and it just never stopped getting weirder. They like wheeled me out into, they're like, we got to get this guy to like a psychiatric hospital. So they're like wheeling me out, and I see this EMT guy, and he looks like he just gives me this evilest look and smirked at me. And I knew him from somewhere. And I'm like, something clicked in my head, and I'm like, man, it just felt like there was some kind of like, just something going on that I just couldn't quite figure out. And you have to, and it's taken me years to try and separate, well, what's delusion? What's reality? And it never even got better at the psych hospital. I mean, they put me in such a stupor from the drugs that I like couldn't even get up out of bed. I would just like, I didn't even get up to go to the bathroom. I mean, and then they kept like calling me for meds. They kept shoving these meds. And then like, it was just a horrible experience. And I really did think I was in hell for a while. And it took, a long time to recover from that, to gain some kind of understanding about what's happened. But it's like I was seeing things that I think some of it was real. Our minds, I do believe, can turn against us, our subconscious. If we fill ourselves with evil things, or we watch maybe horror movies, what's to say that your mind couldn't make up a scenario and just totally go against you, or there's a dark entity attached to you that's pulling those strings. I don't know, because it's not like you can see them and they're going to present themselves to you. But I felt like these were things coming from outside of me. I know that they were not all these, it's like, man, I was being bombarded. I was just like tuned into everything, and it was just scary. So that was my NDE. That was my second NDE that was, of major, significance, that really turned my life around. It did take quite a while to, get my mind back. Like I said, it took like 4 psych hospitals later to, cause I didn't trust anybody. Like I was just totally, like just shelled in, so it took me a while to like trust people, for a lot of stuff. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
When you first started hearing the voices, was it like hearing your own voice, or were they voices that were completely different?
They were all different, and they were all different. Most of them were like masculine, but yeah, like none that I recognized.
Were there even feminine voices?
Yes. I remember I was talking to some like little girl. I was talking to these 3 children, and they told me that they died, and like we were like playing a game together, and like, there were like some cool spots that I would like go, but it just seemed like the negative attacks were more. It just seemed like, it's like, man, they really wanted me to off myself. And I'm like, why?
Mm-hmm.
But I've come to believe that life is such a precious gift that, it's a big deal to try to extinguish that, that light. And who knows, maybe I did succeed. And, this is another, maybe I went into another alternate reality from that experience, who knows?
Since you have a history of using, was this experience anything like you've had prior to this with using, or was it completely different?
No, that was completely different. It drove me, and I tried like a couple more times after, just because it was just so terrible. I just wanted out. Because I knew how long it was going to take, to get my mind right from these drugs. And most people don't have that opportunity when they go so far down that rabbit hole with substances. You know, most people don't come back from it.
Do you feel like you were being attacked by entities?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you feel that using the substances weakened you so you were vulnerable to them?
Yes. I think every drug changes your vibration. Caffeine, tobacco, marijuana, alcohol. It absolutely makes us susceptible. I've always been kind of susceptible to energies, but I've never had anybody to help me figure that out. I grew up around a functioning addict. So that's what I became. I just minus the function, and then, through learning about like things that people talk about on your podcast, how, we're more than just our bodies, how there is spiritual life, how there is good and darkness out there. And they hate the lukewarm. They hate a guy who, I'm going to dibble in this evil a little bit, but I'm still consider myself a good person. They don't like that. Being lukewarm in that aspect just, left me open to, I think, that attack. You can't have it both ways.
Do you feel like you were possibly half here and half out, like halfway on
Yes.
On your way to the other side?
Yeah. And maybe if I would have went all the way, I would have maybe put myself in a hell experience, because I had a vision one time of hell, and it was in a dream, and it was so real that like it just scared me. I'll never forget it. And it was like this rock and roll concert was playing, and there was all these freaking like zombies people, and they were all just bashing against each other, and there was blood and guts everywhere. And that was like, it was like something showed me like a version of what hell could be. And I think maybe hell could be our own creations, because I've had my mind totally turn against me, and that wasn't the first time. When I tried to detox off of methadone and heroin and all this stuff, it was like you're so opened up to attacks, and then your mind, you just lose your mind. And thankfully, like, I've gotten that back, but it's like now I understand that I was extremely lucky, and I've been given another. I probably have more lice than a cat at this point, but it definitely made me not want to squander my life. And that's why I studied this type of thing, because I hope to help other people with my experience find their way out of the darkness, and know that that there is a way out, but it does take a lot of strength, and you just can't go about it half-assed. You really have to try.
Are you totally clean now?
Well, I run a cannabis company, so I love smoking weed. I study psychedelics, but besides that, I don't do any like hard. I don't consider marijuana a drug at all. It's really helped me, and my kids actually got me back into it. Cause like, I never even thought about, cannabis, because I've, come from all these hard drugs, but I don't drink alcohol. I don't do any uppers, I just smoke weed and that's it. And drink coffee. So yeah, I've been clean for about 7 years now because I overdosed at my mom's house on a New Year's Eve and I almost died that time. So that was, quite a few years back, and I've been clean since then. And it's been a really important to me to dive into this subject and to figure out my own, experiences and to try to just become spiritually better.
Do you feel like it's your purpose now to help people that were like you get out of that situation?
Yes. I try to use my cannabis platform to reach out to like veterans. But I want to do more. I feel like I'm not doing enough. But yeah, I love helping people. That's what I do. That's why I got into like what I do now, because I've reached a lot of addicts, a lot of people coming out of prison. Everybody needs love, and especially the hardest people to love, so yeah, I do feel like it is my calling to help others.
After either one of your NDEs, did you happen to have any new spiritual abilities that you didn't have prior?
They say 85% of people are followers, like 5% are creators, and then like 10% are like leaders. So I've always had, I'm sorry, 10% are observers and 5% are like creators, leaders, influencers. So I've always had the ability to just see through the bullshit. I'm an observer. I've always had that ability. I know when somebody's lying to me. I know, when something's weird going on, I just know. And yeah, that, I think the ability gave me more so within myself to not see the bullshit coming from myself. I could always see it in other people, but it's like, how can I do anything good if I can't be good for myself? Like on an honest level. So it gave me spiritual insight that like, it's like, man, you were bamboozled, you were like, yeah, I've been misled, and, I didn't want to look at it as like I'm a victim, because I don't want to see myself as a victim. Mostly it's of my own making. So, but as far as like psychic abilities, no, I wish. But as far as that, just the ability to see through things, and now I know that things are just not as what they seem in this world. So yeah, that's the best way I could answer your question, Jeff.
What inspires you about either one of your NDEs?
I draw my inspiration from the fact that, love will always conquer darkness. And, it inspires me to the fact that there's more than just, the things I see in life. There's beauty in the world. There's beauty in everything, and there's beauty in people. So, I believe I have gained a lot. I've gained a lot of empathy. I try to see things from other people's point of view, especially like people that I've hurt or stolen from. I try to think about, like, what if I was them? Like, how would that really make me feel? So it's really made me empathetic towards others.
Are there any other ways that we haven't spoken about that you've changed?
If you would have known me before, I was a totally different person than I am now. So, I just think that loving yourself first is the most important thing.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
Absolutely.
What's the best way for them to reach you?
My email. You could also, we have a Tribute Viking Cultivation Facebook group. That's our business. And like I said, we help people. So yeah, you can reach me on my email or
what is your
reach us
email?
through Instagram or Facebook. It's BillBreedy@yahoo.com.
Would you like me to put that in the description?
That'd be great.
Have you ever considered being hypnotized to see if there's anything else from your NDEs that you don't remember?
Yes, because I know I've left a lot out. I mean, but some of it's just so crazy. Like, this is the first time I've like openly talked about it besides with my wife, you know, without like breaking down and crying. Because it's just hard stuff to talk about. But absolutely, I have thought about, you know, finding a hypnotist, but like, it's just hard to find somebody, you know, that you can trust, I guess I should say, you know, because you can, you know, go on Google and, you know, try and find somebody like that. But, you know, I don't think that's the way to go about it.
I guess it's best to get a referral from somebody who would say, this person's great, go use them.
Right. Yeah. I would love to get hypnotized. Like, I personally don't think I can be, but they say those are usually the ones that just get nailed right off that. So
now, during your second NDE, you didn't happen to see any entities, did you?
Yeah, I did, but like, you know, it's very hard to explain, you know, like I know that answer's in there somewhere, but like they do their best not, because like, okay, maybe if I knew, you know, because they're trying to make this think that it's me, like myself is attacking myself and I'm never going to get out. So I just felt like they did a very good job to kind of make it feel like it was all me, you know, like all this is just coming from my twisted mind, you know.
Right.
And now I know that not to be the case. But when you're stuck in it, you know, it's a whole different, you know, when you just, yeah, it's a whole different experience, like when you're in it, you know. But reflecting back on it, yeah, I know, and some of these people, like I would see their faces, you know, like they're regular people.
Prior to this, you didn't have any interest in like Satanism or witchcraft or the dark side or anything like that, did you?
I've always had an interest in that stuff, but will I practice it? No, because I've learned enough that you know, that's not an avenue you want to go down to, but I'm very curious about it. So, you know, I've always wanted to know these dark, evil things. So now I do. So be careful what you ask for, because I was very curious about, you know, well, what is it like to practice magic? You know, well, what are the consequences?
Were you using a Ouija board or were you involved in any activities that would draw these spirits to you?
Maybe, you know, I played around on a Ouija board before. Nothing really happened, but yeah, absolutely.
I was just trying to ascertain, like, did you seek out this dark stuff or did it just come to you by chance due to the use of the substances?
Yeah, I actually, you know, was seeking out the light, you know. I like going to church, you know, I like singing the songs, you know, feeling that spirit of God. You know, I'm not necessarily a Christian. You know, I like the Viking traditions because I'm Scandinavian, so I really vibe with that. But you know, I've never had like a clear concept of what my higher power is, you know, because I'm one of those people. I got to see it to believe it. So it's hard for me, you know, to just blindly have faith in something that I don't know. So I just think when you're, when you're trying to find your way, and you're putting all these substances in your body, anything could happen. I study psychedelics. I've done DMT, and I've done mushrooms, and the places that I've been, because of those substances, made me realize that, there could be multiple layers of reality and dimensions out there. It's just what we're tapping into. But like I said, I'm very, very conscious of what I put in my body. Like I'll prep for maybe months to do DMT one time, or maybe just microdose on it. So, because I'm very scared of like ever that, that happening or repeating same patterns. But I think there is a direct correlation with like methamphetamine, and, they see shadow people after 4 days, like all that shit is real. And I think the uppers are some of the worst, because you're like a freaking beacon, because your mind is like going so fast, and, things can latch on.
It would have been pretty crazy, like during your first NDE, if you would have went to the Great Hall in the Sky and were hanging out with Odin and Valhalla.
Man, that would have been great. I would have loved a glimpse of Valhalla, but it just wasn't meant for me at that point. I feel like I still need to grow, and I feel like I have a long way to go, but I just hope that I can keep progressing and help some people along the way, and hopefully my story, because I know there's plenty of drugs. It's not hard to get drugs out there. I know there's plenty of people who are addicted, and I just feel for them, and I really, there is a way to get help. There is a way.
Well, I hope that if somebody who is considering using sees this podcast and will realize that if you do, it could put you in a position to be under attack from entities like you were.
Absolutely. And, I had no spiritual awareness. Like I didn't know that, like, the things you learn in meditation, how to surround yourself with light, how to deflect things so they don't enter. Like I had no clue about any of that stuff. I was just like, I was clueless,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish I would have known some of the things I know now, but I wasn't there.
All right, Ryan. Well, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I guess I would just have to say that, no matter what you're going through, just hang in there and know that this life is so precious, and that you're given a gift just to have this, this 3D existence, and just make the best of it, and know that there are consequences for everything you do, for everything you get into. I think karma's real. So just try to be the best person you can. And I totally believe in you.
Ryan, thank you for that message, and thank you for being my guest.
Hey, man, thank you for having me, Jeff. You're an awesome guy. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. So are you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.